It's the end of the year, and I've kept up my New Year's resolution of reading every single Webtoon original series that came out in 2024. And before I make a tier list ranking all of them, which no joke will take multiple days to record, let's go through every series that came out in November. This is Coffee Break. Welcome back to Coffee Break. This is a little unscripted segment where I talk about every single Webtoon series that comes out in a month. These past year, I've talked about, I think, everything from April to this year. I've talked about every single series in this long form format. If you've missed that, you can go back and watch that, or you don't have to. I've also been doing it as short, so if you don't want to see me ramble about a series for anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour, I don't blame you. And like always, this time we do little games of bingo, because I've noticed that Webtoon series can be a little tropey, a little cliched, and that's not a problem on them. It's just something I've noticed, so I'm like, let's have some fun with it. And I put a list down of all the cliches and tropes that Webtoon uses, and I put them in a bingo card, and we play bingo through with all the different series that comes out. I'm gonna quickly randomize this so you know I'm not cheating, and boom, these are all the tropes that you're gonna see. I will put, oh no, Isekai is not allowed to be there. Isekai is a middle one. Dang it. This one. There we go. Isekai is in the middle, and these are all the tropes you'll see. We're gonna move on to our first series. Duchess in Ruin. Follows a Duchess in Ruin, I guess, technically. The main idea is that we follow a Duchess who was in an arranged marriage. That arranged marriager turned traitor and was basically started a rebellion against the Empire. So then he died, and then she was taken captive and then given to a mercenary as like the prize, and then mercenary was like turned noble. Let me see if I can find him. I want to find him for one very specific reason. This is the mercenary that turned noble. Look at his neck. It is I don't know what about this neck. It looks like it's curving in. It goes out and then curves back in. This man's neck is bigger than his head. Anyways, I didn't care for it. It seems like it's an enemies to lovers, kind of a fake dating situation-esque, because he doesn't seem to care about her. Honestly, with so much like nobility that I've been reading, yeah, here he is. He looks normal here. With so much like nobility in things, it can be hard to it can be hard to like stay interested. This is actually a complaint I have leveled against surprisingly martial arts series, where too much is going on at once. They build an entire world and then don't really leave two rooms, basically. So they build an entire house as the world, and they tell you all about the different rooms and how each room connects to each other room. And then they usually like don't leave one or two rooms when there's like 80 rooms you can explore. And then when they do, they bring one room up and they spend like 30 episodes in it. Other than that, I think this has a market. This has a demographic. It is not me. It is not me who is that demographic. But I'll say, you know, the art is pretty. I'm sure if you're into this type of series, it's probably not a bad type of series to be into. Or it's not a bad series for that kind of genre and trope. I just kind of don't care for it. But you know, I'm not gonna care for every single series that comes out. I really can't. But we can move on to our next series. My Avatar's Path to Greatness actually has a decent premise, but is basically just the auto leveling or auto hunting with clones series at home, if that makes sense. Honestly, if they came out at the same time, I think I would have preferred this one over the other one. Because I'll be honest, the auto leveling is the thing with isekais, and I should explain first. So the idea is that in this world, people get isekai'd into a fantasy world, they get powers, but they're given 24 hours notice. So a lot of people just commit crimes in those 24 hours because they're just gonna leave. You know, they're gonna skedaddle out of this earth to a fantasy world that many might just die in. So there's like no reason for them to care about doing things. And our main character was kind of the person. Kind of a person who was attacked by one of these people. One of these people blew up his house, killed his entire family, and ruined his leg. So it's like, yeah, he's been traumatized through that entire thing. And I think that's a really cool idea, being traumatized by like a hunter from an isekai world. Or I guess you can make the argument that it is a reverse isekai world. I wasn't gonna make the argument that it was a reverse isekai world, but one can make the argument since the fantasy can kind of cross over, but it's not like gates or towers or anything. The problem is so his leg gets hurt in the accident or something, so then he gets kind of traumatized with it. It's a cool premise, but then like he almost immediately gets over his trauma because he can make clones of himself, and that's kind of it. I'll say they gave the clones a little more personality. I think one becomes a skeleton and one becomes like a hero, and it's funny that they have like a rivalry when they're the same person. I think that's a fun idea. But then it's just like another isekai that I think I just don't care for. And that's not necessarily saying, oh, isekais are all bad. I'm just saying that like nothing about it really grabbed my attention. And that's not a fault of the series. It's just a fault of me reading 300 series in a year, basically. Honestly, I think I understand if people say they like this series. I just read too many. But if you do like this series, I want to know why you like these and any other series that I'm not reading, because I'm going through all the series I'm not reading right now. So please let me know. But we can move on to our next series. A Savage Proposal. Feels a lot like a Duchess in Ruin, to the point that I kind of forgot there were two different series. But they are different, and they do have a different premise, but they kind of end up in the same place. Where the other one's a Duchess. This princess, her castle's being invaded by this mercenary or whatever nonsense. And then she has to kind of go and make negotiations with him because he wants to marry her for reasons that I don't remember. And then she's like, don't worry, my lover will save us. And then they enter into the negotiations and he's like, I got your lover, he's dead. And she's like, guess I'll marry you. But be warned, I'm carrying his son or child or whatever. There's a lot going on that I'm not fully aware of why it's going on, if that makes sense. One of the things I think is not the problem, but something I've noticed about these series is that they have two ends of the female lead. It's either a weirdly passive, kind of a little more like fragile feels wrong, but like that kind of like very passive, very Princess Peach-esque character with like a little bit of spice. Or the opposite end, where it's like a very strong female lead. And of course, I prefer the very strong female lead because they're just more interesting. But like, I feel like this trope is for people who like the more passive female lead being swept away by the strong masculine protector or whatever nonsense. It feels very alpha male to say that, but it feels like that's kind of what this series and the Duchess in Ruin have in common, where it's like a semi-passive female lead kind of gets swept away by a strong guy, and there is an audience for that. I don't think I'm that audience. Well, we can move on to our next series. Who is that long-haired senior? Is actually surprisingly pretty funny. The main idea is that we follow a girl who's really only interested in guys with long hair. It doesn't matter their body type, it doesn't matter their personality, it doesn't matter anything about it. She's only interested in people with long hair. There was this guy who was seen as like a thug. He was seen as someone to be avoided, basically. But she just loved him because of his long hair, to the point where I think it's really funny that he's like, someone likes me. Someone likes me. I should improve myself to be someone that person would like. And he comes back with a shaved head. And he's like, I improved myself. I lost weight. I got my hair cut. I'm going to start working harder. And she's like, never mind. I'm not interested in you anymore. It's stupid. It's stupid. It's dumb. But I think that's kind of the point of the series. I don't think it's meant to be taken very seriously. The reason I say this is because, like, in the next episode, she goes on a blind date, or at the end of the episode, but the next episode, she goes on a blind date with someone who's like, has long hair, but is like, I'll only date you if you shave your head. And it's like, oh, this is an interesting situation. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. You know, I think it's supposed to be like a story about vanity, about why you're interested in people, and if your interest is only like skin deep kind of thing. But it's presented in a very goofy fashion, and I think that's clever. I think that's fun. Nothing I would read, to be honest, and not less because it's bad, but more because I'm sick of school series. I'm really sick of school series. College, high school, doesn't matter. I'm sick of them unless they have a unique trope. But I'll say this does have a unique premise to it, so I think it's a cool series that if what I've said is cool to you, I think it's worth checking out. We can move on to our next series. Starting over with The Dead You is a romance series that shouldn't be a romance series. The point is that our female lead gets connected or close with this male lead because he's rich and her mom worked as a maid in his mansion or whatever nonsense, and he becomes really yandere towards her. She's like, he's like, I still like you, and you're gonna marry me, and if we don't marry, I'll kill you. Ha ha ha. This is a romance. It's a romance. Why is it a romance? You've seen this nonsense. Anyways, the idea is that, like, fast forward years, she's in high school, he died, but then she sees someone who looks truly exactly like him. Like, that's the guy. Yeah, that's exactly like him. Yeah, that's like the same person. And then it's like starting over with The Dead You, and he's very yandere. Like, it's a little concerning that this is in romance, because when they were younger, he's like, we're gonna be friends together, you're gonna be my doll. And then she's like, I don't want to do this, and she started staying away, and he's like, look at this necklace I stole from my grandma, it's her favorite, I'm gonna say your mom broke it unless you play with me. What? It shouldn't be romance. I'll say it should be thriller. It should be thriller. It should be thriller. But a male yandere is new, I'll say. Male yanderes aren't a common thing, mainly because they're just stalkers and they feel weird. But I think the series does a male yandere in a decent enough way that it doesn't feel like as much as a crime as it probably should be. We can move on to our next series. A Night with a Time Limit is an isekai, actually. This isekai deals with a person who got isekai'd into a fantasy world, and he was dying, and when he got isekai'd into this fantasy world, he didn't get isekai'd as like a super strong hero, but he has a timer system. And the timer system, he has to kill living things, not to steal their time, but like he kills living things and he gains time based on like, quote unquote, how important they were, you know, if they're peasants, if they're nobles, yada yada yada. And he can also use his time as like powers, I guess. It's not super clear, and I didn't read past like episode 5, but the idea is that he has to kill people to get powers or to get time, and then he can use that time to become stronger. I don't know. Overall, I guess there's no reason I wasn't, you know, too into it. But I truly just didn't care for it, honestly. It's a bummer of a world. My guy gets betrayed immediately. So it's hard to like kind of connect with characters if you feel like everyone's out to get you kind of thing, which I don't think is a problem necessarily, but just like I like characters more than anything else. I think characters are like the bread and butter to a series. They're the meat and potatoes. They're the main entree basically. If I don't like the characters, I'm not going to care for the world they're put in. And I think that's kind of a problem with this series. Oh no, that's kind of a problem with this series, and I think a few of the other series on this list is just, I just don't care for the characters. And when you don't care for the characters, why would you care for the world they're put in? That's kind of it, but we can move on to our next series. Surprise You're Gay is a goofy series where two girls accidentally seemingly fall in love with each other, as one girl pretends to be a different dude to try to pass his class, and another girl tries to fall in love, like force herself to fall in love with others because that's what she thinks is normal. It's a cool premise. Yet again, another school series, and I just don't care too much about school series nowadays. It's funny. It is goofy, I'll say, and I did laugh a few times. I guess just nothing stuck out to me that made me want to continue reading the series, but I'll say it is funny, and I do like the characters. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. I feel like I need to explain why I'm not reading a series. I'll say if I'm not reading a series and I don't say like, oh, it's bad, it's not a bad series. It's more just like I read too many, and it didn't like stick out in the way that other series used to stick out to me. I'm also pretty specific about I can't say that. I picked up like the most generic romance series this month. Dang. You know what? I just didn't read it. We can move on. When Two Villains Meet follows kind of two villains meeting, basically. We follow like a very cold Duke, and we follow our female lead who became like the mastermind of a criminal empire or something like that, and she makes the Duke fall in love with her using a love potion, and then she tries to kill the Duke for reasons that I'm not quite sure why. She doesn't really seem to know why. Like, it doesn't tell us why she wants to kill the Duke. I don't think, unless I missed that in the 5 episodes that I read. It doesn't tell us why she wants to kill the Duke. It also kind of doesn't explain why he took a love potion, why the king, because later the king wants the Duke dead. There's a lot of the series it doesn't explain to you, so you kind of feel out of the loop. I think it's funny. Definitely it's funny that like the cold Duke is absolutely head over heels in love with her and she just wants to kill him. I mean, outside of that, you know, I didn't care much for it. You know, it's just not for me. And that's fine. That's fine. If it's not for me, it's not for me. I feel bad when I don't pick up a series and I don't have a reason to pick it up. But you know, I think at the end of the day, if it's not gonna entertain you, if it's gonna feel more like a chore to read, then there's no reason to pick it up. I'm defending myself. We can move on. Adopting a Zombie is a Canvas Greenlight series, and it's about a doctor adopting a zombie and trying to experiment on him, and it also might be a BL. Yeah, that's what it seems like. I can't really say anything else about it, I guess. There's not a lot else I know about it. The characters don't, you know, the character's a doctor. That's something. I think that's kind of like why I didn't continue reading it. Whereas, because first of all, I'm just not a fan of post-apocalyptic stories. Just usually not. There's no post-apocalyptic story, I think, other than like Zombie Funeral Service that I kind of latch onto in any kind of story, because post-apocalyptic stories, in case you didn't know, are usually bummers. They're usually sad series that end with everyone either dying or just two people not. So like I usually stay away from the end of the world stories. And then, you know, zombies, don't care much for zombies, never was a fan of zombies in stories. It feels like everything in this series is working against like my interests. And another thing is, I don't know these characters. I don't know what their motivations are. I don't know anything about these characters, so I just didn't care to continue reading it. It seems like it has a really core following, which I think is good. I think there is a group of people who want the tragic Yuri is female. Yaoi. They want the tragic yaoi. There's not enough tragic yaois on Webtoon. They want the tragic yaoi. So you know what? I see the appeal for those people. It's just not the appeal for me, if that makes sense. We can move on to our next series. To Die or to Fall in Love. Hey, we haven't had a series that started with a sex scene in a while. Let's cut this. I went to go check if this series was mature. It is in fact mature. Not just because of the sex scene, but she just got killed in the dream. We follow Isabella, I believe her name is. Bella. Yeah, Isabella. Her sister Lucy. Isabella's the least liked person in her family. Everyone kind of hates her for some reason. I don't really know why. They say she's ugly, but like in the same way that a young adult book will say a girl with glasses is ugly, and then she takes off her glasses and she's magically beautiful. You know, that kind of thing. The idea is that she's less liked. There's a serial killer going around for some reason. She witnesses a murder, and then I can't show the murder because the murderee is basically just like naked in a bunch of roses, which is a very weird way of doing it. Anyways, she gets kidnapped by, this is a white screen, she gets kidnapped by the serial killer. She gets kidnapped by the serial killer, so does her sister, but then her sister truly pushes her off the horse and leaves her to get dragged back by the serial killer. Then the serial killer is like, hey, you have, I think, a week to not fall in love with me, and if you fall in love with me, you're gonna die. What? Huh? I think it's a weird premise, right? Where it's like, you have 1 week to not fall in love, and if you fall in love, you will die. This is, by the way, a wrong title. This title is incorrect. It is to fall in love and die. It is neither. It is not both. It is not either or, sorry. It is both. If you fall in love, you die. That's his premise, I believe. Let me go check it. That should be his premise, though. If after 15 days you do not fall in love with me, I will let you go unharmed. But if I succeed in claiming your heart, I shall kill you. Yeah, that's the premise. He's gonna kill her if she falls in love with him. Which is like, you have 2 weeks to fall in love with someone or you don't die? Like, I don't understand the premise, maybe. So maybe that's why I wasn't such a big fan, comparatively. But you know what? I think there's a demographic for that group, and that demographic is not me. And if that's you, if you're that demographic, why? I'm not questioning your taste. I ain't kink shaming you. Why is that your demographic? I'd love to know. We can move on to our next series. At Your Mercy is truly so basic. It's so basic. I kind of forgot this series came out this month, and it hasn't been out for a while. I wrote a script using this series. The idea is that our girl gets isekai'd into a book, not as the villain, but as like, kind of, it seems like a dumb female lead who's very ditzy and lands her father, like bankrupts her father. So she tries to kind of like not do that. The thing is, and I completely forgot about this, the thing is, this is her second time getting isekai'd. I don't know why they make that like a common thing. Like, this is her second time that she's gotten isekai'd into a book. Yeah, this is her second possession. She was someone else, and then she became a new person, and then she has no idea who that first person was. Oh, but it was in the same novel, so that might be something, I guess. It just didn't click for me as like, well, maybe if they use it again, maybe if they bring up the person who she was before, I would see that being cool. But like, also, that needs to be like a recent thing. That can't be in 50 episodes we meet the other person. That has to be like in episode 3 we meet the other person. Which, to be fair, I didn't really get to episode 3. But it just kind of like, nothing about it made me more interested in this than any other royal romance with an isekai twist thing. Our main characters didn't, the romance didn't, the isekai-ness didn't. You know, it just kind of feels like every other one, but oh, we need to stand out. Let's make it her second time doing it, kind of thing. You catch my drift? I feel bad about bashing things, but that I think is a fair criticism to a series. We can move on to our next series though. The Flower That Swallowed the Beast. I have a question. What's with romance series and having like an aggressively, almost criminally aggressive male lead? Do we like that in romance series? Especially like, I understand if like they have a a reputation of being like a cold duke and you're like, oh, but I'll I'll melt their hearts, you know, I'll make them fall in love with me and they'll treat me like a princess and they'll protect me from everything. But like, this guy's choking her right here, right now. I understand it's for like, it's a royal regression revenge romance where she dies because she had a bad life. She goes back in time. Don't show her body. She goes back in time. Don't show that either. She goes back in time because she had a bad life. And then she wants to align herself with someone who will gain power and strength and yada, yada, yada. I think just the pink-haired protagonist twist, you know, we love our pink-haired protagonists. I think just like everything about what I've said can be said about 30 other series, and I don't really know the difference between this and other ones. I think maybe he's a werewolf. Yeah, King of the Werebeast knows what you're up to. So surely he has sharp teeth. He's a werebeast, maybe. You know, that's the trope. That's the premise. You know, that's fine. It just, I think like every other royal regression revenge romance, if you don't have anything more than those 4 aspects, you don't really have a series that, you know, more people will enjoy. We can move on though to our next series, which we're finally going into series I would read if I wasn't so busy. Absolute Regression feels like the reincarnated Miranum Lord, but like the opposite end. So reincarnated Miranum Lord came out last year. It's about a dude who gets who becomes like the head of the alliance or whatever. He becomes the strongest martial artist. Gets old, dies, goes back in time. Or not goes back in time, gets reincarnated into a different body of a hooligan guy because we love Lloyd Frontera. But this is kind of the opposite, where we follow a someone from the son of a demonic cult, or not cult, sect. We follow the son of a demonic sect whose family all died to one of the strongest martial artists in the world. So he wants to go back in time to protect his family. The art is pretty, I'll say. We love a pretty series. We love art. I do like how the beginning establishes the idea of going back in time as a big deal. Like, I think a lot of series kind of undercut how big of a deal going back in time is, where they don't really touch it more than, oh, she went back in time. Oh, he went back in time. But here, it's presented as almost an impossible feat to gather all the materials to go back in time, that he spends truly most of his life, and at the cost of losing an arm too, to get all these materials to go back in time. Even to the point where like there was like a test from a god who was like in control of this, where it's like he gathered all the things, and then he's like, yeah, there was this test, and it, like forgiving him was like the final step into like, you've passed the test, you deserve to go back in time kind of thing. It's a cool setup, I'll say, because it creates a big amount of stake for this series, where he sacrificed basically his entire first life to try to go back in time to fix the problems, or to fix the past problems that he's gone through. And I think that's a cool premise, and I think that's a really cool way of establishing how important his goal is. If I honestly didn't read a few other martial arts series, I probably would have picked this up. The problem is, martial arts series, I don't have a problem with martial arts series, but I think I have a problem with martial arts series where like most of them are fine, But then, like I said before, with the romance, the royalty, they build this entire intricate world, and then they usually stay in 1 or 2 rooms, and they don't really leave those, except for like rare circumstances. So it just kind of feels like so much world building for so little payoff. But I think this series was set up to be a cool series. We can move on to our next one. Juvenile Detention Center. Feels very Lookism. Feels very Manager Kim. Feels very, we're set in a world of fighters, of gangs, of all these like different cool fighters who are all improbably strong and skilled. Our main character is the son of a gang member who beat him up every day to train him. He goes to jail because his father hurt his only and best friend, so he put him in a coma. So then he goes to jail for a couple of years. I forgot how long. And then his friend goes to visit him, like, so often. Yeah, here's his friend. And she's like, hey, we're gonna get out, and we're gonna move the soul together, and it's gonna be great. Look out for yourself. Anyways, she dies by Truck-kun. Truck-kun's in this one. Not as an isekai, but as a, you're gonna die. So he goes sicko mode because he has no reason to, like, hold back kind of thing. Overall, you know, it's fun. It's action for action's sake. And if you like the action of a bunch of series out there, there's no reason for you not to enjoy it. Because his goal is to climb the prison, to defeat all the members of his gang, of his father's gang, to earn a wish or to get out early or something. I don't really remember why. It's truly just action for action's sake. And if you like action, I'll say this is pretty good action. But I mean, other than that, nothing else really grabbed my attention. We can move on to our next series. Back to Chanbi. Chanbi. Back to Chanbi. There's 2 reasons I didn't pick up this series. The first reason is it's a school series. We follow our male lead, our female lead. They're both lovesick idiots. They both love each other. They want to go out, but they haven't. It's a very cute, very blushy. They truly do like each other, and it's very obvious to both that they like each other. But the second reason I didn't read it is actually a good reason. Well, it's not like a good reason why I didn't read it. It's a reason that the series is good at something, but I don't want to do that. The thing is, the series stresses me the hell out. It stresses me out so much. So the idea is that these 2 people love each other, very obviously. But the male character, the female lead, tried to ask the male character out. He's like, oh, I'm busy that day. Let's hang out a different day. I don't know if we're gonna be a good match. And he's like, dang, I missed my chance. And truly the next day, she gets conked on the head and loses her memory of the past year. And turns out they weren't really close publicly. They didn't really like know of people didn't know that they were close. No one knew that they were like close to dating. So no one kind of knew anything about them. So like the entire past year was just erased, and their relationship starts at 0. And then a different dude who was pretty clearly shot down by her multiple times comes in and is like, oh, we were so close, you know, we're gonna, like, we were about to go out, we were about to do things, you know, we had a great relationship, you loved me and I loved you, but we can wait until you get your memories back. And it's like, oh, that's so creepy, and it stresses me out so much. It's cool though. It's good. It's good at making you feel tense and good at making anxiety build. It is very like, oh no, what's gonna happen next? I sat down and I binged the 7 episodes and I was sweating at the end of it. It was like, whoa. It stresses me out though. It stresses me out. I probably won't read it. Like, I probably will read it in doses. Like, I don't see being able to read one episode and then wait the next week and then read it again. Like, that seems like it's a stressful experience for me. I'll probably just read it like once a month and just binge read like the 4 or 5 episodes that come out. I think that's probably the way I'll do it, if I don't forget the series is out. Overall, I think it's a good series, but it's just like, it stresses me out too much to read it fully like that. We can move on to our next series. Void Man is a post-apocalyptic story. As nukes went off, the world ended, parents were there though, so he had a good time. Anyways, the gods showed up, I guess. The gods showed up, they kind of like, hey, follow us or perish. And you know what? A lot of people perished. I think the gods are kind of like really terrible entities, you know, they kill for fun, they use human souls. Our main character makes a deal with the devil to use the devil's powers to just kill a bunch of gods. And it's honestly a god slayer story. It's a story about killing a bunch of gods. Which is pretty cool, I'll say. It's pretty fun. Action is intense, and it's really fun to see. Because he has, like, the power of, like, multiple gods, or multiple hell entities, the equivalent of. So it's really cool to see all his powers coming out. I don't know anything else about the series, if I'm being honest. I forgot their goals, I forgot their motivation, other than, you know, my family died, I'm gonna kill the gods, that kind of thing. Overall, it seemed pretty cool. And I think if you said, oh, you should check out Void Man, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I could see this series going in a really cool direction. I could also see it going in a relatively mundane direction, even though it's a God Slayer story. We can move on to our next series. Special Civil Servant. Feels like Chainsaw Man as a webtoon, but this is coming from someone who has not watched Chainsaw Man, so truly, I don't know, it might not be Chainsaw Man. The idea is we follow a special group of the government who, there's yellow powder sometimes, and in this yellow powder there's monsters that appear, and they hunt down these monsters, and they gain strength from the yellow powder. Yeah, you see that she uses her blood to, like, create a sword, maybe? Or, like, she gets bona fide sword, maybe. Our main character didn't know he had these powers. And then trying to... What did he try to do? He was trying to, like, purge some... He was trying to purge some, like, curse his father had or something. And in trying to purge that curse, he accidentally discovers he has... powers. It seems like his quote-unquote powers just makes him hungry, maybe? Like, it just makes him chew on the things, if I could find that. Yeah, his power just kind of makes him go sicko mode and just, like, crunch the guys. Like, that's what his powers are. Like, some people have the ability to, like, crush things with telekinesis. Others have teleportation. The girl before had weaponry. This guy just has crunch powers. But to be fair, I think the crunch powers, they stop, like, the entities can't regenerate from the crunch. So that might be his powers, I guess. I think this is why people use the copycat system, or the copycat power, because it's a cool way of making our main character stand out in a world of powers by making him have a bunch of different powers, and it's fun. I don't know what his powers are, but it is an interesting thing to, like, oh, what could his powers be? I think that is the point where it's like, ooh, what could his powers be? Who knows? Don't you want to read and find out more? And you know what? Maybe. Hey, maybe. It is on my would read. We can move on to our next series. The Masters have subscribed. I'm surprised this series is on Wood. It's a martial arts series where we follow, like, the runt of a martial arts act. You know, the least talented one who gets trashed every time and who's terrible at fighting. And then I think the head or the founder of the martial arts sect he's in, from the heavenly realm, so from beyond the grave, is watching him do all this stuff. He's like, hey, I'm gonna teach you how to do this correctly. And he's like, cool, let's do that. And that's it. I don't really know what else was in store for this series. It just kind of seems like a martial arts series. And you know what? I think that's fine. I don't think a series needs to be more than that, but I also just didn't care. I'm surprised it's on Wood because I don't think I would pick this up. It's just like not something I really am too interested in. I think I like the dynamic between our run to the litter and the master in the Heavenly Realm. But other than that, I didn't see anything that really grabbed my attention. We can move on to our next series. Love and Other Wicked Things is a series I'm so bummed I'm not a bigger fan of. Like, the series is set up to be a really cool story, and then I just don't know what didn't grab my attention. Like, out of all the series, I think I'm more bummed that I didn't really like this one as much as I thought I would. The general idea is we follow witches and witchcraft. We follow a family or a community of witches. We mainly follow our female lead who comes from a family of witches, and she is a witch. It has very Encanto vibes, where our female lead can use magic but can't use her family's divinity. Or not divinity, divination magic. Also, I'm confused about the world building of this series, where it seems like they just really want to call them witches, but like sometimes they're more mage than witch. Like, I don't know if there's a is there like a clear-cut definition between mage and witch? Because with this series, she calls herself an earth magic. And not an earth magic user, an earth magic. And it feels like just the way that the series didn't want to call her an earth mage and didn't want to call her an earth witch. So it's like, she's an earth magic. And I'm like, what is an earth magic? Just call her an earth mage. You know? It kind of feels like, oh, we like witches, they're just gonna be witches. Well, you can be mages too. Like, I don't understand that clear-cut distinction. Other than that, I think I found out the reason, I don't think I found out the reason, but I think I know the reason why I'm not like the biggest fan. It is semi-written like a Wattpad story, and it is just a Wattpad story. No shade on Wattpad stories, but you know, it's written like a Wattpad story. So I wasn't, the writing wasn't like the biggest thing I was a fan of. But other than that, you know, it's not bad. I do wish I was a bigger fan of it. We can move on to our next series. My Daddy is a Villain is unfortunate because I said daddy on the internet, on YouTube. That's tragic for me. My Daddy is a Villain is kind of, it's just a comedy series about a demon lord king and his little gremlin elf child. I don't know what his child is, but she seems like elf. And it's just like him being a good father. And like, that's it. It's cute. It's fun. It's charming. It is rather short. But the episodes are rather short. So it's one of those series I put in Wood as like if I'm bored one day, this is like a short series that I can binge like a handful of episodes at once, and they're bound to make me smile or laugh because they're very fun and they're very cute, and I do enjoy reading them. It's just not something like I think I want to add to my list for every week to read, but it is something I will check out every now and again because it's very charming, and I think that it doesn't need to be anything more than that, I'll say. We can move on to our next series. The Count's Secret Maid is a tragedy of a series. Our female lead's mother abandons her, she's born into poverty, her father abuses her, all of her siblings die except for one who is like weirdly like egotistical and weirdly like above it all, which is like your siblings. It's weird to be like, yes, you're trash. Meanwhile, I'm amazing. She has a quote unquote birth defect. Yeah, I guess this is the clearest picture of her face you're gonna find. I don't know what the birth defect is. Like, it just seems like she's bruised. I think that might be it. Like, I think this falls into like, you can't make her too ugly or else the readers aren't gonna be into her. like that kind of thing. Anyways, she gets sold to be a maid to a blind duke who's like isolated from society after he becomes blind, and he's abusive and yada yada yada. The art is very pretty, I'll say. The characters, you know, less so. Not because they're not drawn very prettily, but because they all kind of suck a little bit. Our dude is abusive, our female lead is materialistic, you know, I think it is not a series for romance, even though I am 80% sure it is a romance story. It is not a romantic, it is not a feel-good story. But you know what? Hey, that's fine, right? It is very pretty, I will say. We can move on to our next series. The new Heir's Secrets is surprisingly not super high rated. It is 7.74, which is not low, I'll say, but like compared to a lot of other series that came out, I don't think it deserves that rating at all. It is the idea of a undercover boss story where our new Heir is actually the CEO of the company, and I don't think they explain why he's being a new Heir kind of thing. But he goes in probably just to like see how the world works, yada yada yada. Our female lead finds it out, and they either fall in love or she becomes like important to the company, and he also uses her as her corporate slave to begin with, but then as time goes on, I assume they become friends or whatever nonsense. It is fine. It is cool. I like the characters, and I think it's fun. Other than that, I just didn't see anything else to it. You know, the idea of a boss dating a coworker is, you know, murky waters at best. But, you know, it's fun and it's goofy, and I do enjoy what I've read. Probably wouldn't read more than that. But we can move on to our series that I have picked up, starting with New Magical Me. It is a Magic Girl series. We start at the end. We start at the end of a normal Magic Girl series where our Magic Girls are beating their final bow. Queen Miasma, I think her name is. She's, you know, the enemy that brings a bunch of monsters into the world. So we follow the end as they're fighting their final foe, Queen Miasma. And they beat her, but then their leader, what was her name again? Star Luminous, or Erica, dies. She dies in battle, and then the series cuts to like years later when they're like adults now. And you know, as time goes on, you know, she's kind of losing it. You know, she's not doing super well. Her job kind of sucks. She doesn't really have a lot of friends. She just kind of feels like she's not doing well in life, because it's kind of weird where it's like, you saved the city, but now what? You know, it feels like you kind of peaked, right? I assume you kind of peaked. And while visiting her I assume friend and feels like crush's statue, the Queen Miasma comes back, or one of the minions comes back, and then also the leader comes back. And it turns out the leader faked her own death because she transitioned. She's trans, or he's trans, sorry. He's trans and didn't want to be known as Erica. I think his name is Ricky now. He didn't want to be female, and being a magic girl kind of ruined that, because, you know, it's kind of like a constant reminder of who you are and who you quote unquote should be. So now that like the villain was defeated, he could be whoever he wanted to be now, and he decided to be not Erica anymore. And it's like, oh cool, now I get to be finally me. But then Queen Miasma comes back, and now he has to, you know, still be a magic girl, but under this new guise of being Ricky instead of Erica. And I think that's a cool series. That's a cool idea. And I think the idea is going to be like, we're going to go and recruit our old friends, and we're going to do it all again. It's going to be great. And I do enjoy this. And I am excited to see where it is going to go, because I feel like there's blame on both sides. And I don't think the series is dancing around the fact that Ricky hiding it forever and then pretending to die to transition is like was the best way of doing it, because even like episode 5 or 6, whatever we're on now, is like, hey, you were kind of a jerk for doing that. You led us to believe you all died just because, like, I know why you did it, but it's just kind of like everyone is going through it. Everyone has felt the weight of you leaving us, and it sucks. So I do enjoy that. We can move on to our next series, though. The Empress's Two Wolves. Remember when I mentioned before that I picked up a very generic romance series? This is the generic romance series I picked up. It is truly the Remarried Empress. It is the Remarried Empress. It is the Remarried Empress with animal people instead of humans. Except the Empress, she's a human. So, actually, wait, no, the Remarried Empress has animal people too. Anyways, the idea is we follow a human empress in the Beastskin Kingdom, or Empire, or whatever nonsense. I can never understand the difference between empire and kingdom. That's besides the point. Anyways, we follow the Beastskin Empire, and we follow the human emperor, Empress, dang it, Empress, who got married to the Beastskin Emperor. There's this idea that brands should appear on, like, your partner's skin or your soulmate's skin, which is weird. It's a very weird, like, claiming an individual kind of thing. Anyways, the Emperor's mark or brand appears on a different woman. Gasp! Who would have seen that coming? They appear on a different woman, and then, you know, it's a surprise. Unsurprisingly, she looks a lot like Rashta. She looks a lot like Rashta, and she acts a lot like Rashta. Yeah, I'm not gonna show more than this. You could see where the mark is. It's truly just his name. Desmos is the emperor. It's just his name on her boob, and I think that's so funny. Anyways, she falls in love with a different dude who is more of an emperor, or not more, but is like equal status to him. So it's like, hey, no one loses. It's just the Remarried Empress, and I like the Remarried Empress because I think a good part of the Remarried Empress is that it gives you people to hate. Like, oh no. It's easier to connect with our main characters when you have someone they're opposed against, or when you have someone they're opposing and you don't like that person. The equivalent of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We hate Desmos and, what's her name? I truly forgot her name. I think it's Titi. Who knows what her name is, but like, we hate those too, so we automatically love our human empress and the lover she gets later on. So it's good storytelling. I can't fault it for that. It is basic. It is very basic. I do want to see more of the animal part come up. It hasn't come up so much, and I wish it did. Other than that, we can move on to our next series. Worth the Candle is an isekai, and a clever one at that, where our main character's best friend dies. And while in school, I don't know, I guess, do they put, like, if someone dies in your class, do they put flowers in a picture of that person on that desk? That feels like a lot. Anyways, he dies while in class. He snoozes off and he wakes up in a fantasy world, a semi-fantasy world. And he has to survive. The cool part about it is that it is his, he DMs a Dungeons and Dragons game, and it is his Dungeons and Dragons world that he DMs to his friends. That's a cool aspect of it, I'll say. That's never really been done before. I am holding off on this series because so far I think it is missing a little bit of character, but I think it has been doing a decent job in the most recent episodes at establishing why he's doing the things he's doing, because for his late best friend, he kind of wants to, like, be someone who his late best friend could be proud of, and he doesn't want to abandon people anymore. And I think that's a cool thing. But we're gonna have to see more, because so far we only really have 1 or 2 important characters, and those important characters don't really have a character. You know, they don't really have a lot of characteristics that make you excited to continue reading them. So I'm holding off on seeing where this series is going, but so far I like the premise, and I do think it could go in a cool direction. Anyways, we can move on to our next series. The Death of Kindness is a pretty cool series, I'll say. I didn't recommend it because it's a lot to recommend at once. So the idea is that we follow this group of 3 siblings. Youngest sister, super smart girl, but the oldest dude has like a mutation that makes him go monstrous sometimes. But he can also like cut out his heart and regenerate it instantly, so that's cool. Anyways, it's hard to recommend because I honestly don't know where this series is going. They left a lot to be like a mystery. Like the cores in him that make him mutate. There's a new group of people who want those cores. There's a different group of people who want to like, who think he's the one, quote unquote. I do like it so far, and I am excited to see where it is going. So I am enjoying it. The characters, I'll say the characters are the reason I'm reading it. The characters are fun. So I didn't realize he ooh-wooed in this panel. What? Ooh-woo one more time, I dare you. The characters are fun. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of series don't stick out in my mind as much, is because the characters aren't fun. The characters aren't interesting. And like, I like these characters. I like seeing their connections with, I like seeing the brother's connection with the sister and the other brother. I like seeing all these different connections and all these different attitudes and all these different situations that they're in. So it's really enjoyable to see it all happen. And I am kind of excited to see where it will be going. And, you know, the monsters, if she's alive, spoiler alert, she might be dead. You know, all these different things that like, oh, I'm excited to see where it's gonna go. So we can move on to our next series. Code Demon is a cool series that I am excited to see, yet again, where it's going. It's hard to judge these most recent ones because, you know, they kind of just came out a few weeks ago. So like they have what, 3 or 4 episodes out. The idea is that we follow a dude who is the son of a CEO, and he has to take over a tech company because his stepbrother died, but he was more into art, so he didn't really understand any of that. So when trying to study at Satan, like Satan, he gets isekai'd into a fantasy world where if he survives, he gets a wish. The reason I like it as much is because comparatively, there's a lot of things that make this series way more interesting than other isekais. First things first, he gets isekai'd alongside a large group of other people at once. So like, it's not a surviving the game as a barbarian kind of thing, where multiple people get isekai'd, but like, it's not super sure who's isekai'd and like, it takes time to get to see them. No, you're isekai'd and you see all of these people at once. And I think that's cool to establish, hey, we're all in this together. A second thing is that, I skipped over it. A second thing is that, I didn't skip over it, dang. A second thing is that, the powers are based on college courses or college degrees or paths, you know, coding, game development, sports, music, biology, arts, you know, and then they get those powers when going into this world. And the final thing is that they get a demon friend who helps them in their process. Morningstar, look at him, he's so cool. Overall, I think the game world is pretty cool. It is pretty well developed, and I'm excited to see like where it's going because, you know, it's just fun to see. You see all these like HP, AP, SP stats all the time, and they do a really good job of keeping track of like what is or isn't important to this stuff. How different people's powers work, how different demons' powers work, all this stuff. I am really enjoying how this series is going, actually. And we can move on to our last series of the month. Wow. The Heir. Also feels like it's a lookism kind of story, but it's a lookism story I'm interested in. Our male lead is the heir of a massively wealthy corporation. Not accidentally, but his entire family basically dies in a boat accident. Or a yachting accident. I don't know. Most of his family dies in this boat accident. And he's asked by his grandfather to take over the company if he survives. Gives him the pen. Turns out it was another family member that kind of sent them all to die. He gets washed up. He gets found by pirates. The pirates trade him to be a very cool killer. So he's amazing at fighting. And he tries to fight off against his his old family that basically led him to die. And it's a revenge story, and it's a revenge story with a lot of action and a lot of fighting and a lot of very good fighting. I think the difference between this one and Juvenile Detention Center is that with Juvenile Detention Center, it felt like action for action. This one feels like action with a purpose, with a goal, and I do like that. And also on the other end, I do like the characters. We're introduced to this guy, but we're later introduced to like his guy in the chair, his like hacker with all the information, and that's leading up to be really fun as well. And those were all the series that came out in November. Wow, I did not win bingo this time, unfortunately. So as the rules, which I haven't followed, you get to do a punishment on me, and I will figure out what that punishment is by the end of the year, hopefully. Overall, November was, I think, a little basic, a little boring, a little not for me. I think there were series out there that I can understand if you were into, but they just weren't the series I'd be into, unfortunately. And that's no shade at any of these people who've done any of these things. I think any step in the, webtoon space, in the art space, in the content creation space is a difficult thing to do. I know I can't make content for everyone. I know not all content I make will be, the best for every single person. But overall, I think if you enjoy any of these series, even if I didn't, good job, I think every series is someone's favorite. And I'm not here to bash on these series. I'm just saying, hey, these aren't for me, but if they're for you, go ahead and have fun with them. But that's all I have for today. So I hope I'll catch you on your next break. Take care.